party starter. Everybody, let's go.
What is up, YouTube? So today, my friends, what we're going to work on is building out some infrastructure to do some testing with a local Docker registry. But before we do so, we need to define some things and kind of peel back the onion and understand why we want to do it and what all this stuff is. So let's first touch on the Docker registry, which we're not going to get to the specifics of configuring this thing in this video. There'll be future videos after this one that will cover down on that. But a quick overview of what Docker registry is and why you would want to host one locally. So we can go out to docs.docker.com and we can see and read up on what it is. A registry is a stateless and highly scalable server-side application that stores and lets you distribute Docker images. The registry is open source, and you can go and look at the Apache license there. So why would we use it? They give us some examples here and use cases. Well, you would want to tightly control where your images are being stored. So the prime example is in a dev environment where maybe the organization doesn't want its developers going outside the bounds in which they've put forward, and so they would go ahead and architect where their local Docker registry is going to be, and then ensure that they put controls in place and tools that developers are only pulling from that local controlled registry. And then, as you can see here, these kind of just all build on each other. Fully own your images and distribution pipeline. We just kind of talked about that. Integrate image storage and distribution tightly into your in-house development workflow. So they have three things. These aren't really, I guess they could be mutually exclusive, but really these all kind of build on, and a good architecture is going to implement all of those. And then obviously the alternative is you don't host your local registry, and you're going to be pulling from the global Docker registry. So that's the end game. That's what we're setting out to achieve, and there's going to be some testing that needs to be done along the way. But before that, we need to do some crawling, right? Crawl, walk, walk, run, and we need to do all that on AWS. So let's kind of lay some groundwork and get some common language understood within that sphere. So I've created this amazing diagram here. As I understand it. So let's kind of take a look at what's going on here. So the blue cloud, that is our internet, okay? And then we have this left rectangle here that is inside the gray box that holds AWS. So AWS is actually out on the internet, theoretically, right? It's a collection of data centers all tightly integrated with a lot of wire, etc. But conceptually, we can see it as AWS is sitting out accessible via the internet, and within there they have they host multiple companies, multiple services, etc. So we see here we have the AWS rectangle per se, or collection of services and data centers. We can see here we've got company A VPC, which stands for Virtual Private Cloud, and then I have on here AMI library because we're gonna go ahead and jump into that, and I just want to again explain or at least conceptually lay all this out, so when we're doing it, you have a much better understanding. So there's going to be an AMI library that is either going to be created by me, the community, or Amazon, and we'll see that here in a second. We can also see that there's company B, and this just goes on to n number of customers that are going to be up there in AWS. And to the right, we have the arrow that's showing, for example, company B is now going to be expanded. So Elser Enterprises or Elser's Musings, we could be company B, and we could see now this is our expanded footprint as it sits on the AWS platform within the cloud. So we can see here, company B, we own a virtual private cloud. We could have multiples, but for this diagram simplicity, we have one VPC, and then we're going to have these EC2 instances. So we're just going to stand up two today. We're going to stand up just a generic Ubuntu that we can do things with. And then we're going to have the other one that's going to be dedicated to Docker, which is going to host our registry, but that's really just going to stand on an Ubuntu image as well. So If we scroll down here, we can see there's this happy person at their house, and they are connected via their ISP connection up to the cloud and managing all of this fun. Okay, now we've highlighted AWS, but this could be Azure, and this could be GCP, DigitalOcean's, etc. Whatever the cloud provider is, that could be hosted here. Okay, so that hopefully is kind of got our minds right. Before we jump into this, let's jump over to our dashboard inside of AWS. So once you've created an AWS account, you've stood it up, free tier, whatever, or this is your organization's account, this is kind of what the console is going to look like. And here you're going to manage all your resources. This is where you're going to do everything within managing your enterprise as it is in AWS. Now, it's obviously good to understand what is here, and that's a full-time job in of itself, is researching and learning all these different things. And what's good to note is you don't have to just manage them here. You can manage them via the command line. So again, we're going to crawl. We are in the crawl stage, literally. If you don't even know how we got here, just kind of, you can go out to get starting with AWS and step through that, and then AWS or Cloud 101 is deploy EC2 instance. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So I'm going to walk through the GUI, and we're going to do it, and then we're going to do it in two different scripting environments. We'll do the AWS CLI tools and shell scripting, and then we'll show it using the AWS PowerShell tools, which I did a previous getting started video. Okay, so without further ado, let's kind of just launch an instance here. Click on launch instance, and then I'm going to say, hey, I want to use the Ubuntu server. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Ubuntu server, and we're going to do it on the T2 Micro, which is just a free tier, and for our testing purposes that should be sufficient. And I could hit next here and get a bunch more granular control, which again is a whole other class within of itself. And if you guys want, we could definitely go through that and do some explanations, but that's not the purpose of this video. So again, I can hit next, and add granular configurations to this EC2. But we just want to do a vanilla installation. So one thing to note here is this AMI. Okay, so that's saying this Amazon machine image, this is how Amazon references it. So if we go back to our diagram, we can see our AMI library. That's right, that's hosted here. So go back and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So if we go to previous, I think that's at the beginning. So by selecting Ubuntu, that was us selecting our AMI. And let's go back, choose AMI, step 1. All right, so we can see, let me do a quick explanation here. So my AMIs, you can see I don't have any AMIs, but if I was a company B legitimately, and I was the individual responsible for creating, let's call them golden AMIs, where we used to call them golden images, and I guess we still do. But here is where I created those custom organizational AMIs. They would be hosted right here. We can see that the AWS Marketplace has tons. This is where vendors place a lot of their AMIs, etc. And then we see we have community AMIs. And you can come in here and peruse at your convenience. Or we have the quick start ones, which are honestly outside of quick starts. Actually, I guess I've used all of these. So whatever I was going to say there just doesn't really matter. So I'm not going, well, I guess we can. So we'll just select this AMI again. And I want to show you, there's one way of getting an AMI. So if you know that you eventually are going to be sprinting, and when I say sprinting is because we're crawling right now, but sprinting would be using some configuration management tools, etc., where obviously I need to know what my AMI ID is. Here's one way of finding it, is just clicking through, selecting it, and grabbing it right here, and then put it into whatever type of tool or script, and you'll see what we're actually doing that. So let's just go ahead and launch this thing, and I already have a key pair set up. So you can see I have it selected here. And let's go ahead and launch this thing. All right, and I'm going to take a drink. So we can see that now Amazon is taken over. We essentially have ordered our pizza. It's on demand, and we're saying, hey, give me a running instance of a machine that looks like this or has these specs. And that's what they're doing. All right, so I guess what we can do before we jump in and do this same EC2 deployment within the shell, well, I'll legitimately show you how we access this deployment that we just did from the console. So it looks like we have already, we're still initializing. So once we get through this initialization point, we will SSH into that box, and we'll show you that there is no magic here. So then when we get to doing it with PowerShell and the AWS CLI tools, you'll know that there is no black magic. I guess while that initializes, we can kind of just take a look here at some of these, a lot of all this data down here that's describing this virtual machine. So instance type, we can see T2 micro. We can see the private DNS name, which will come in handy later on with networking. And as we can see here, we've got private IPs, and we should see and notice that is not routable via the internet. But over here, we can see we've got the IPv4 public IP, and that's what we're going to be accessing or the IP that we're going to be hitting via SSH, as well as you can see the public DNS name to be able to access this machine. Okay. What else do we have that's of importance? Security groups. And again, this is not an AWS course. We can get into that, but we can see I didn't create any special security group. Didn't have one already created to connect to this thing when it was getting deployed. So we can see that the security group that was applied was just created under the hood by Amazon, or aka the launch wizard. But if we click here, we can see the basic inbound. So Amazon is so amazing that, hey, they're like, if you don't know what you're doing, at least we're going to open this thing up to receive SSH connections from anywhere on the entire internet. So that's kind of handy. Next, we can see that by default, Amazon is opening this machine to be able to get to anywhere on the internet. Okay? Anywhere on the internet. What else we have? We see here we have the root devices, which those are actually, we can see here, EBS. I think that's Elastic Block Storage, or Elastic Block Store right there. Boom. So if we jump down in here, we can see all those different volumes, but that's where that's created there, and we are already on. Let's see if we got a refresh. We're still initializing. Awesome. What else do we have? Nothing really too exciting. The AMI. So here's another way of getting the AMI. It is right. If we pull this up, we can see that the AMI is right here. So we could copy that, put it in our editor, save it off for reference later, and what have you. Okay, and we can see here owner. That's kind of important. So I think that would be my user ID. So that's telling you who created this thing. We can see that this thing is by default one network interface, and it's connected to a subnet, and it's part of a VPC. So remember, back to our picture. We've just deployed first, let's just call it the generic Ubuntu server, and it is part of the default company B VPC. Okay, so a lot of stuff to understand. We've got to know the technical interworkings, but we also have to have the theoretical knowledge. So very exciting time to be within this field. If you are just thinking about getting into it now, cloud skills are definitely high demand, and you're never too late to learn new technology. So we are good at new technology there, and I guess I could do that soapbox later time. But all right, so we're good on these checks. So what I can do now is come up to actions. We'll do connect, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this guy. So that's just Amazon giving me a quick cheat sheet on how to get to it. So we'll go back to our editor, and then I'm going to paste this. Okay. And I'm going to exit here because that's not where my key is actually located. So we're going to clear that. I'll hit up arrow, Control A, and then we're going to come in here and I'm going to change the path to where that actually sits. And I believe it's right here. Okay, hit yes. Oh, it wants me to type yes. And we are in our Ubuntu server. Great. So I can say host name, and we can see that it is given the host names, which is probably its private IP. So 172.31.22.208. Okay. Now again, all types of more advanced things that we can do in here, not just from a Linux standpoint, but also a lot of kind of enumeration via just some cloud things that get delivered out of the box on these machines in order to facilitate a lot of automation and management of these cloud assets. And again, that's not really the scope of this. So we've deployed our first EC2 instance. It was all through the console, and we've gained shell access, and we can do things like, sudo apt get update. And we can see, based on that security policy, remember, out of default, Amazon hooked us up. They're like, hey, this machine has full access to the internet, and we could do an upgrade, and that's why this is successful. If we didn't have access to the internet, obviously this would be a no-go. All right, so that is pretty much, I guess, a win there. Now what we want to do is do the same thing via a shell script. So, because if you're a Linux or Unix guy, and that's kind of your platform that you want to manage, and there's a time and place for everything. So that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to show both. We're going to show PowerShell, and we'll show shell. So I've already kind of did the homework on that, and here, and using the AWS CLI tool, so we can say, actually, what I'd like to do is we could do terminal rename, and what I can say is, instead of calling this the integrated PowerShell, we can call this AWS Ubuntu. Okay, so now down here I know that is my AWS Ubuntu in the cloud. Here, this is my local machine. It's easy to get turned around. What we're going to do is we're going to change the bash, clear it. All right, so now I could say this is we are currently on my management box. Remember, let's go back to the image. So Ubuntu box sitting up in the cloud within our VPC, and I just changed to the terminal of my, no kidding, we'll call it a management machine that is sitting right in front of me that I could touch at my house. So we are on this thing. Okay, going back. So we can say which AWS. All right, so we can see that these AWS tools have already been installed. Okay, that's why we have the ability to call this. So really quick, you could easily, if you don't have them and you're on the Linux machine, you could say getting started with AWS CLI. Okay, and step 3.1, AWS command line interface. This is the getting started AWS command line interface. There we go. Preview, blah 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 blah. What else we got here? So they're just showing us some usage. We want to say getting started. We got install, getting started. Is that where we just were? I think that's where. Nope. What happened? Okay. Intros, no. Maybe user guide? We just want to figure out how to install this. Installing, there it is. Okay, boom. And I'll take a note of this. I'll provide a link to the installing AWS CLI in the description. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I think there's, as you can, we'll just quickly peruse through there. I do, if I remember correctly, I think Python 3, Python 3 is a dependency, but that shouldn't be too easy to get started. So that's how you do that. And then if you want to see the, here's come down here, let's say, I think that's a commented shell. Maybe not. That looks right. There we go. All right, so I'll add that link to the description of Getting Started with CLI. All right, so let's kind of step through this command here. And this all is in the AWS CLI docs. So I guess we can come in here. And another link that we will provide is documents. We'll say AWS CLI docs. Command reference, there it is. Okay, we'll grab this and we will provide this in the description as well. All right, so what do we got? We've got, we'll comment this out and we're going to call this the CLI Getting Started. Okay, what do we got here? We've got the CLI reference. Okay, reference docs. So we'll get that to you. All right, so we've already, all right, so we've installed. Next thing you know, we're going to call on EC2. So if we come to the docs, I guess this is kind of a getting started docs for the CLI and how to read them, just like I did with the PowerShell one. If you haven't watched, please go to do that if you are a PowerShell person. So we can see command reference. Where is EC2? I guess EC2 would be ease. So we can see here, I have EC2. Now we're going to dig into EC2. All right, we get a description of what EC2 is, and we have all of these amazing available commands. Well, let's save the hassle, and we'll go ahead and copy the run instances to get to that piece of the doc. All right, so then we can drill down into this command. So description, launches specified number of instances using an AMI for which you have permissions. So that's good to know. All right. I can't provide an AMI that I don't know the AMI, and we could go back to the beginning of this video where I show you where you get that, where you obtain that AMI ID. Okay. And one thing you may run into is, hey, I've been tasked or I'm responsible to deploy this AMI that some other guy in another department told me about, but I'm going and looking and searching for it within the AMI library, and my account doesn't have permissions. Well, the docs say here, make sure that that AMI that you are going to be leveraging has been published to you and you have the appropriate permissions to view it and access it. All right, so some awesome stuff in here to read about. Here is literally everything that we can provide and define within this run instances. So you can see arrays of things and stuff. Okay, so image ID, value. So let's kind of dissect this. All right, so we're going to run instances, and then we're going to call on image ID. Let's go to image ID where we're there. Excuse me. All right, so we've provided the AMI image ID. This is that Ubuntu server that I showed you that we just deployed via the console. All right, next thing we're going to provide is a key name. Is how we're going to access this thing. And we can see here that I've already provided EC2 tech key pair. That's the one that I have access to. It's literally sitting on my disk. Instance type. Let's go back to the docs. Where is instance type? Excuse me. Instance type. Where is it? Here it is. Instant type value. We are saying T2 micro. So if we come, let's go look for instance type. See if there's a here's the instance type. Boom. So now here's the help or the explanation of TAC instance type. So it says here the instance type for information. See the instance types. Blah 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 blah. Here are the possible values. Great. So now we are learning how to read this documentation. Okay. So we can see we are using the T2 micro, which is free tier. Perfect. What else? Placement availability zone. So we go back up. We can see here we are about to provide placement, and we are saying, well, if we go down to placement, let's see what the availability is. Okay, so placement, that's tech placement. So availability zone takes a string. Okay, so if we go back to ours, we said placement is availability zone, availability zone, you see that there, is equal to, we're putting this thing in US East 2C, okay? And again, this is not on a availability zone or really like the AWS at large class or video. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, tons of documentation on that. If you want me to do I guess a much broader interview or overview, rather, we can do that. So just drop me a comment and let me know. Otherwise, I really the way I do things is I look at the task and then I work myself backwards. What do I need to do? What do I need to learn in order to accomplish that task? And really just kind of eliminate a lot of the fluff. But off of that tangent. All right, so we've got the availability zone. What next? What we're doing is setting the block devices, and we're just saying, hey, put that on dev sdh blah 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 blah, and then here's your volume size. So you can go and dissect all the parameters and arguments that we're sending this AWS EC2 run instance command, because this is the command. These are, we'll call them switches, and these are the arguments, or also known switches, parameters, or you may hear people call them. And then we're saying, hey, we just want one of these, okay? So what we're going to do is just copy and paste this. We're going to throw it into our shell. We're going to hit enter. And we can see that something's happening. So we can see we've got, let's go up. So AWS, we just hit the AWS, what's called an API. So what else is kind of implied or has already taken place? So I have the AWS tool, CLI tools installed. I also have a permission file already established in a IAM user that has the rights to be able to deploy an EC2 instance. So a little bit going on that we are not going to explain just for the sake of brevity here. But if you get to this point, you're like, oh, Ben, I did everything and it's still blowing up. Well, make sure you have permissions to execute the command you are trying to execute. In this case, questions to ask is, hey, do I have the permissions to be able to deploy an EC2 instance? If you don't, without a definitive yes, you need to then go and research and dig into IAM within the console and figure out what user you're using. If you validated that your user does have permissions to do that, you need to make sure that the AWS EC2 or the AWS CLI tools have access to the passwords, permissions, and credential files, etc., to be able to do that successfully. Okay. So here's just the API is returning to us just kind of a summary of what it's wiring up, so we can see that it deployed to this VPC, etc. And that's good because, again, if I needed to do some further automation and these data points were of value to me, I could capture this return value into a variable and do other things. Again, that's sprinting. We're just trying to crawl right now. So we've done nothing. Excuse me. Excuse me. So we've done nothing outside of how we deployed that virtual machine via the console. Okay. If we jump over and let's refresh this, we should see our second. We can see it's still initializing. So amazing. We've just deployed a virtual machine, and we'll wait for that, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go in SSH and verify that that we can actually get into this thing. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and delete that other one. There's no point. We don't need it right now. So you just come up here, actions, instant state, and let's blow that thing away. Good. All right. So what are we waiting? Oh, 2 checks have passed. So all right, I'm going to go ahead and select this. Select that new EC2. We're going to hit connect. I'm just going to copy our connection string. Go back to the terminal. And let's do paste. So we're connecting to that EC2 that we just deployed via the AWS CLI tools. So Control A, just change the path of where this key pair is sitting. Okay, no such file. Interesting. I probably named it wrong. So that was the EC2. I might have named the, let's go here. So you can see how it disconnected. The one where we blew it away doesn't exist anymore. So let's see here. What did I do wrong? EC2 tech key pair. EC2 tech key pair. Okay. So that looks good. Let's delete this. We don't need that anymore. All right. Let's see what's going on. The internet here is kind of shoddy. I don't know. See what's going on. Refresh. Let's do the trusted ping test, right? Let's see if we can hit Google. All right, we're so hot. What's going on here? Let's change the let's change DNS. Let's just grab this public IP. Something's not happy. Well, let's go look back at what the connection string they're telling us. Maybe I needed to include .pem. So connect. No, so they append ec2.keypair.pem. Let's just create a new. Go back and delete this one. Clear. The file EC2 tech keypair pem is not accessible. Well, I know that. I told you to use this one. Come on, give me something. Fail out or something. Let's go. Straight trash. Or maybe I'm trash. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, let's see. Security groups. Look at this. Well, that's amazing. So I guess we probably default. Nope. Let's go back. That's not what I wanted. So we can see here, we could say view inbound, all ports, all protocols from anywhere. For some reason I don't think it likes that. So let's do another quick check. So our shell script here may have not or I'm sorry, we may need to define a security group. That's one thing that we get done for us when we go through the console. So we'll manually update that, and let's see if that's the case. All right, so we come here, and I want to modify this one. Default. Which one's the default? This one? All. So inbound, all. Well, in theory, that would work. Let's do add a role. So no, any edits made to existing rules, So we'll say SSH, blah, source, anywhere, save the rules. Look at that. So it kind of lied to us. All right. So there we just quickly identified that we probably need to, well, I guess now that default, because, so, all right, I'm not going to do it in this video, but just understand that if I don't define a security group in my deployment, it's going to always default to the VPC's default. Well, our VPC default security group, it had that all, but I think that's a bit misleading. So what did we do? We added that rule. Okay. So once we go ahead and make this next EC2 instance using PowerShell, because I'm not going to define a security group, it should default back to the default of the VPC, and we should be good to go with accessing it. So we can do command palette, terminal rename, and we'll solve this AWS Ubuntu. Okay, there. So that's that. Let's open up another one. And now what we want to do is we want to translate all of this, and we want to write it in PowerShell. Okay, so let's see what we got really quick. Let's go back to our EC2 dashboard. Running instances, we can see that we have that one running instance that we just deployed with the AWS CLI tools. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing but with PowerShell. So if we need to get some IntelliSense going here, and no IntelliSense. Let's do I think what we can do is exit this out, which we just would lost our, and we'll reopen this. Where Docker registry. Nope. Okay, boom, there we go. That's what I want. I wanted the PowerShell integrated console, and I'm sure there's probably another place that you could start it, but the best way of doing it is really just have the PS1 selected, close it out, restart up. It's going to detect and it will default to the PowerShell integrated console. And why is that important? Because now I'm going to have, so like invoke web request, right? So now I have the IntelliSense, but I have to be inside of an integrated console to be able to have that. All right, so what we want to do is use these amazing PowerShell commands. We're going to say new EC2, and there should be EC2 instance maybe. Yep, great. So calls the Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud Run Instances API. Run Instances API. So let's go back here. Look at this, Run Instances. I told you that command was hitting the Run Instances API. So these tools are really just an abstraction over a entire Python library. So that's exactly what is happening. So EC2, new EC2 instance, where is it? All right, so here we can see within VS Code, I have all of these data types, essentially that same documentation that we went through with the CLI tools is the same thing with PowerShell. So we're going to select instance here, and I know I can do TAC, and then my parameters or arguments, whatever parameters are going to come up. Let's see. So we're calling the run instance API, and that's already implied via this commandlet. So coming back to our shell script, we know now we need to provide an AMI. So if I come here, I'm going to copy this. We're going to go back to PowerShell. We're going to say AMI, tac image ID. So we can see image ID takes an array, it takes a string. So it doesn't take an array, it actually takes just a singular string. So here, and we're going to put that in double quotes, and then let's provide the AMI there. Okay. Next, actually it does image ID. Okay, no, I think that's saying this is required. Okay, so stepping this thing out. And so in PowerShell, just like I can separate a line with this backslash. Well, the backslash or whatever in PowerShell is this tac. Okay, then I come over here and just make it really nice. So what's the next argument? The next argument is key name, and I'm going to copy this key name because I'm lazy. Okay, and we're going to say tac key name, and key name takes, we can see it takes a string. I'm going to paste that there. Likewise, I'm going to put our tilde, key name. What's next? Instance type. We'll copy the T2 micro, come back over here, and we'll say instance type. It takes a instance type, that's kind of interesting. Parameter instance type. Let me show you. So instance type is telling me it takes an instance type. So I'm thinking it's going to do some translation. I'm thinking I can provide a string here, but if I didn't, I could say instance type, but that's like an AWS blah 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 namespace. So well, if it blows up, it blows up, but we're going to say T2 micro there. Okay. Next, what are we doing? Come back. So placement. Let's copy this guy. So we're going to say place. Oh, we need to do a tac. New line. Placement. Look at that. Placement availability zone takes a string. What is going to be Control V? It's actually just going to be USC East. Okay. Then we're going to say new line, a new parameter, which is block device mappings. Let's copy all of this. This should be interesting. So we're going to say block device mappings. What does block device mappings take? Block device mappings. So we'll see if that blows up. Device name. Okay, we'll take note of that because again, the big difference of PowerShell versus Bash and shell scripting is obviously objects. So we'll see if a string satisfies there. If not, we'll go to the documentation. And then looks like we'll do count here. So we'll say maybe this new EC2 instance implies 1. Is there an amount? Max count? We're just going to go to the documentation before we pull the trigger on this. Okay? So we'll say AWS PowerShell tool docs. And we will go down to EC2. here. And we will go all the way down to new EC2. New EC2 Instance Router. Calls the Amazon compute, so this is the same thing we just had. Okay, so this looks like it takes a block device mapping array. So that's kind of cute. We may have to build that. And is there anything with a count? Max count, minimum count? Let's see what those mean. Min. So the maximum number of instances to launch. Okay, so we're definitely need to provide that. So we're probably going to do max and min of 1. So min count, we'll do 1. Max count. Oh, we need a tag. We'll do max count is 1. All right. So let's just run this and see what happens. If I'm thinking this is gonna break before we do, so I guess we can go read it. Let's make sure. So block device. Okay, so it's all the same. Let's go look at this. Block device mapping. Ooh. Okay, so take device name. Gets sets a property of device name. Look, the device name, for example, is blah. So that's the dev SDH, and then we can see it gets and sets automatically set EBS volumes when an instance is launched. All right, what is this? Volume size. All right, so we got some work to do to be able to fully translate this, but that's why we're doing this. All right, so we can see that we're going to create one of these guys. So this is getting into object-oriented programming, which is always fun. So we've got a block device mapping that has a constructor that takes the device name. So what we're going to do is come up here, and we'll call this BD for block device is equal to, we need to put that namespace there. We're going to say new. Okay, so now what we can do is say block device dot. So device name is equal to what? It's going to be equal to this, right? Okay. Next, what we want to do is say block device EBS dot volume size. What's volume size take? It takes an int. Volume size int is equal to 100. Sweet. So then we can take this out, and we should be able to say block device, hopefully. Okay. And I don't know why that did that. All right, so what have we just did? We just grabbed this namespace. Okay, we can see that this block device mapping class resides in the Amazon EC2.model.blockDeviceMapping. We called on the constructor that in PowerShell is done via this syntax. We saved that newly created block device mapping object into the BD variable, and then we set some property values on that, and then we're passing that block device to the new EC2 instance parameter block device mapping, blah. Okay, so if we read all that correctly, filled everything out appropriately, we should be able to run this little snippet of PowerShell code that is 11 lines, and we should be able to get an EC2 pairing. So let's go ahead and do that. Run selection. Ooh, what did that say? The property volume size cannot be found on this object. Verify the property exists and can be set. Great. So it probably wants to instantiate a new EBS or something. .ebs. Yep, probably wants to be set. So if we come down here, probably gets and sets a property EBS parameters used to automatically set up EBS instance. So we click on this. Amazon block device class has a constructor. Okay, so we've got to instantiate that object too now. So we'll just copy this, and we'll say EBS is equal to, it's going to be equal to a new, we're going to say volume size equal to 100. All right, so we just set the EBS block device to the EBS value there. So let's see if that satisfies. Nope. Session setting cannot convert 100 value to system in. Okay, so it doesn't like this. So that's setting it. Now we need to do, say, BD EBS volume size equals 100. It didn't like it in line like that. Let's give that a shot. Yay! Looks like we're in the business. All right. Boom. Now we've just launched our first EC2 using PowerShell, which is objects, so much more fun. We go back to the console and refresh here. Look at that. We've got our third EC2 instance pending, deploying. We'll wait for that to actually, let's check. So I've just selected on the newly deployed one, and to test our theory, we should be able to go to view inbound, and we can see that it did pick up our default policy that we edited. So again, moving forward, or any other, this was again really just to kind of get us going, but to fully deploy an EC2 instance, we're going to have a lot more configuration on that. The exact EC2 it's going to, not all EC2s are going to go to default VPCs, etc. And we are going to quickly grow our code base, and that's where, again, just kind of managing infrastructure of code within these tools that we've already that we've introduced, or we're going to start getting into configuration management tools like Puppet, Chef. A lot of folks use Ansible, etc. For these tasks, and the big one is Terraform. And I plan to here in the near future to do some videos on Terraform, and we'll show how we can quickly manage with code these very large configurations. But that was the purpose of this video, was really just to show you and get us going in this direction. I'm going to come back and we'll do a follow-on of installing the Docker registry and setting up that plumbing, so we can host our own images within our owned infrastructure, and again place some of those controls in which Docker says is the practical use case of wanting to manage your own Docker registry. So if you liked what you saw, just go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. If you guys want me to talk about something or have any ideas, please just drop me a comment below, and we'll take a look at it and try to make that happen. So until next time, guys, peace.